Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Nashua High School South. My name is Keith Richard, proud principal here. And seated to my left, we are very lucky to have Senator Shaheen with us today and the Mayor of Nashua, Mr. Donchis, to discuss a very serious topic in vaping with teenage usage. We have several students here from Nashua South and Nashua North, as well as several guests, invited guests from the community. We're really excited for this opportunity. I just want to thank our video productions team who's going to be videotaping this so we can share with others, so that it goes beyond just the 100 people that are in this room about such an important topic that we all face today with teenagers in schools across America. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Donchis.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. So I'm glad to be here with a number of our students from Nashua North and Nashua South. We're now at Nashua South. Vaping has become a significant problem for everyone in the community, especially our young people. So I want to thank Senator Shaheen for coming to discuss this important topic. You might know that Senator Shaheen was governor for about 6 years before. Right. It's always great to have a governor, former governor, in the U.S. Senate because as a former governor, Senator Shaheen understands all of our communities, knows Nashua very, very well. And I'm glad that she has taken up this issue in Congress in Washington, vaping as a serious subject. So thank you, Senator Shaheen, for coming today and for meeting with us and discussing this very important topic.
Well, thanks very much, Mayor. It's really nice of you to join us this morning. And Mr. Richard, your principal, I asked him if he was related to Keith Richards, the guitarist. He said no. So, and I showed my age because he said most students don't even remember who he is now, but with the Rolling Stones, so I'm sure you know the Stones. Also want to thank the members of the audience who are here. I know that we have the president of the school board, Heather Raymond. Thank you for joining us. We have two of your state senators, Cindy Rosenwald and Melanie Levesque. We have someone from Breathe, New Hampshire, and from the Nashua Prevention Coalition. And I know we have a number of legislators, but I can't see because it's dark over there, so I'm not going to try and introduce all of them. But thank you all very much for coming. And thank you to all of the students for being here to discuss what has become, particularly in recent weeks, a very serious topic. The Centers for Disease Control released some new statistics on Wednesday of last week. What they showed was that 27.5% of high school students were vaping in 2019. And if you want to get some comparison, that is up from, since 2011, it's been over a 1,700% increase. So if you go all the way back to 2000, 2001, less than 1% of students were vaping. So now we're at almost 30%. It's become an epidemic, and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that a number of deaths have been attributed to vaping. 6 people have died. There are 380 cases that are directly attributed to vaping of lung disease that people have gotten in 36 states. So we're seeing a tremendous number of issues around vaping, and we have some research. I was up at the Coop Institute at Hanover, at Dartmouth, a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things they talked about, we had someone from the public health department there, was the number of students and the research that shows how their brains are affected. Because as high school students, your brains are still developing, and young people. And so what vaping does is to send a huge dose of nicotine to young people's brains in a way that has some real impact. And we're still trying to figure out what the long-term health impacts are, but they are significant. And so that's why we really want to take a look at what's happening with vaping. One of the things that the Food and Drug Administration did last week was to ban all flavored flavors of e-cigarettes. One of the things that a number of the e-cigarette companies are being criticized for is the marketing to young people, the number of flavors that you can get, everything from mango to menthol. And so there is some question about whether those flavors ought to be used. And I think, I've done several discussions with at high schools around the state. And one of the things that students said to me back at Dover High when I did this last spring was that they said, you know, we think a lot of people think that there's no danger from e-cigarettes because they're marketed to people as a way to get off smoking in a way that's harmless, that it doesn't create the same kinds of issues that cigarette smoking does. And I don't know if you were paying attention, you noticed in the last week that the FDA administrator directly took on the president and CEO of Juul that makes the vaping devices and said you cannot market this in a way that says there is no harm and that this is a way to get off cigarettes unless you can prove that that's the case. And of course, to date, we don't have any proof. There isn't any way to show because what the research shows is just the opposite. So it's a serious challenge. I'm sure it's something that you all are hearing from other students, and I'm really interested in hearing what you think and hearing what things that we can do to help address this challenge. As I've looked at what we might be able to do in Congress, one of the things that I've done is sponsored legislation that would allow the Food and Drug Administration to charge fees on e-cigarette companies in the same way that they charge fees on regular tobacco companies, and those are then used to help educate people about what the concerns are, the health impacts of smoking. And so this would allow us to do the same thing with e-cigarettes, to be able to have the FDA help let people know what the concerns are with e-cigarettes and vaping. So there are a number of other bills which I think may come up as part of this discussion, and I know that the legislature here in New Hampshire has done a number of things to try and address this as well, including banning vaping, I think, on school grounds, and would be interested in hearing you all tell me whether you think that's effective, whether people even know that's the case. So let me stop there and see if I can open it up, and if anybody wants to make a comment, if you would just tell me what your name is, if you're a student, what year you are, and if you're in the audience, whether you have any affiliation with any organization. So thank you all very much for coming and participating this morning. So students, any students want to comment? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Lamb. I'm a senior here at Nashua High School South, and I wanted to thank each of you for being here with us today. Senator Shaheen, Mayor Donchez, Principal Richard. Thank you for joining us in this discussion. My question is for, I guess, for all three of you. So the recent ban on flavored vaping devices has drawn some criticism for also affecting adult vapers who may be using vaping to try to get off cigarettes. So how would you respond to this, or how would you address those concerns?
Well, as I said, I think we're still looking for evidence that shows that vaping, even in adults, is not harmful for people who are using it. And if you're they have left unflavored products and still on the market, so you can still get those unflavored products if you're an adult and you want to try and use vaping to get off of cigarettes. So I think as long as there's something that people can use, if they think that this is helping them, that's important. And we need to see more evidence about what really the impacts are of vaping.
And I would agree. When this first came to our attention, it was about 2 years ago. I'll be honest, as an administrative team, we didn't even know what vaping was. Saw these devices and didn't, like, what is this? And at the time when we started those early conversations with the kids, students, a lot of them were about the flavors. It was amazing how many flavors there were. So my question kind of to you guys is, did you feel when that was first coming out, did you feel marketed to? Did you guys feel that this was marketed to younger folks, or did you feel like this was marketed to adults who were trying to quit smoking? I'd just be curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I'm Devon Ortiz, grade 12. Yeah, I feel like we were marketed to like as a young group because like we're like the next generation coming up, so they're kind of trying to attack us like mainly first. Because like adults, there's other ways to get off of smoking, but for us, they're trying to like more encourage us to do it than like trying to stop it. Instead of like doing something better, they kind of just harmed us and like are bringing it into schools and stuff like that.
Can I ask, how many of you have vaped yourself or know someone who has? So, virtually everybody up there. So it's pretty widespread.
Yeah, oh, yes, it's, again, took us by surprise. Different devices, and I'll be honest, I think not only did they market flavors, they marketed devices, I think, to conceal. We didn't know what these things were. First, we thought they were USB charges for
Right.
kids to save files to the computer, and how silly that sounds now 2 years later, but yeah, we were caught off guard when this first came about.
Now, doctors in Nashua are very concerned about this. Albie Budnitz, Dr. Albie Budnitz from the Prevention Coalition, I know, is very concerned about the health effects of vaping in general for everyone, as well as Dr. Wolf Rosenblum. She's on the Board of Health here. So I think we have seen some significant negative health effects, both for young people and for adults as well.
And am I right, you've had a debate here about whether you should be
did.
banning products. Can
We
you
did.
talk a little bit about that and what the outcome of that was?
There was a proposal put before the Board of Aldermen to prevent the sale of any type of nicotine products to anyone under 21. The Board of Aldermen voted on that on a very close vote, and they did not pass that. Now, one of the rationales was that they hoped that this would be handled at the state level, and that tobacco products, sale of tobacco products to anyone under 21 would be prohibited at the state level, statewide. Now, that has not happened. We don't know if it will happen, but certainly this vaping issue makes us, I think will make people think about the issue further.
I can tell you there is legislation at the federal level that would ban vaping under age 21, and there's some question about whether that will actually get to the floor and get voted on. But the administration, President Trump and his administration, has also come out with a proposal similar to my legislation that would allow us to actually charge e-cigarette companies on a basis of how much market share they have. And again, that would allow the FDA to enforce and educate people and hopefully get a better understanding of what the real impacts are everywhere from vaping. You know, you said, Mr. Richard, that you all didn't recognize the problem. When I was at Dover High, one of the things they said to me is that teachers didn't even know that students were doing it in the classroom. I don't know if you all have seen that in here at South or North, but in fact, as the result of that panel, they said, well, we really need to do some education for teachers and for parents. There are a lot of parents who don't know that their kids are vaping and don't know what to look for, don't know about the flavors, and so it's really something that we need to educate a lot of people about, and I know that's what Breathe, New Hampshire, and the National Prevention Coalition are working on.
So I wonder what our students think about the idea of prohibiting sale of vaping products to those under 21, since they're all under 21, I presume?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Is that a viable solution? Yeah, the hands. Good.
Yeah,
Let's see
good.
this. Yeah.
Aaliyah Ortiz, grade 11. No, we're not brother and sister. I think the biggest part is that all these flavors were like no one knew the harm of it. It was our generation was so new to it that we were like the guinea pigs of it. We didn't know what the effects were going to be, and also like the little markets around that are selling to underage children are that's just their way of making money, and it just has gotten so big because of that reason.
Yeah, for sure. Now we had a couple of other people who wanted to comment on that.
Yes, hi, I'm Jenna Chiavelli. I am a senior here. I just know, being a student here and an athlete here, a lot of my athlete peers and student peers are surrounded by it, but I've also noticed that it's been a concern to a lot of students and athletes here as they've seen the health cases that it's taken on recently around the country. And so I personally see it going downhill a little bit as a lot of my peers and I are concerned about the health cases and what we've seen as it takes a toll on our bodies. So I believe that most people wouldn't want that happening to them, so they've backed off a lot, as I've seen personally as a student and athlete here.
That's a really good point. You know, as I was driving over today, I was with one of the members of my staff who was a volleyball player in high school and college, and she was saying that when she was going through high school and college that it was not cool to smoke. You know, because we had learned over a period of time. When I was in high school, you know, students thought it was cool to smoke. Well, she said by the time she was in high school, people had learned, because we learned a lot more about what the impact of smoking is and the deaths that are caused by it and the diseases, that it had stopped being cool. It's something that kids didn't do. And so you're right. One of the things that I think we were not prepared, nobody explained to young people what the impact of vaping would be. And so hopefully as we get more information about it, there will be more concern about what the health impacts are.
That's a good point, because we talk as an admin team often, there was a time period where there was no kids smoking in our bathrooms anymore. When I went to high school here, it was often every time between passing periods you'd open the door and, you know, puff of smoke would come out. That was done. It was really stamped out. And then when this came on board, how about that? Do you guys see students smoking regular cigarettes? Is that still common at all, or no? Wow. So they replaced it with this.
Yeah. We had a couple of people, you wanted to comment, and then you wanted to comment in the green.
I'm Haley. I'm a junior here at South. So about 21 being restricting the age to 21. So now, like as a student, I don't think adults get it as much as students do. It is so easy for us to get a vaping device. As many students here, seniors, they're 18, so a lot of students are willing to go out and buy them and sell them to people to get money. So I think bringing up the age to 21 would, in a way, help it, but I still think it would still be quite easy to get vaping devices in a way, because so many kids now are addicted, so they can't go without it.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like drinking, right? You know, we've increased the age for drinking, and yet it still is something that a lot of people are able to do. You had a comment?
My name is Rebecca Lins. I'm a senior at North, and I think that similar to her, I think that, I mean, it is kind of weird how they haven't raised the age yet, because if you think about it, a lot of us turn 18 in high school. So how are you going to try to take a device out of high school when the age where we can have access to it is 18, we're still going to be in high school. So I feel like raising it to 21, it's harder to have friends who are 21 at this age than to have friends who are 18. So like us seniors, like a lot of us turn 18 our senior year. So it's easier for like them to sell and stuff. And I also think like a way, like if you want to get the Juuls out of school and stuff, you have to tackle like the stores who do sell to minors. Because until they don't stop selling to minors, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I also think that it's not just juuling. I feel like everyone who does juul has a reason for it, whether a lot of kids like do it before a test or something like that, and it's like anxiety or something like that. So if you want to tackle juuling, you're going to also have to tackle like the mental aspect of it.
That's a really good point, that substance use has a reason in most cases for people using that substance, and often it has to do with other mental health concerns. That's why we have so many co-occurring issues with people who have substance use disorders. Before we move on, I want to ask if somebody from the audience wants to talk about what the state did in terms of passing legislation to address. If you would just go to the podium, that would be great.
I'm Lata Manjapuri, one of the state legislators from.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm Lata Manjapuri, one of the state legislators from Nashua. My question to you, students, are, you brought up an issue about pain or, mental health kind of the reason why the students start. What are one of the biggest challenges you face as students that you're dealing with pain, emotional, physical, and how you're addressing it? Are students going towards vaping as one alternative for them to address their pain? Because that, if you go back in history, smoking, opioid addiction, or any kind of addiction was geared towards numbing some pain.
Maybe
So-
before we turn that over to them to respond to, can you talk about what the legislature did this year to address vaping on schools?
I
in
think we
schools?
had a couple of legislations. One, I remember when we had, the halls were filled with dealers or businesses that were selling vaping devices, as well as students, when the legislation for increasing the age to 21, and also the sale. And I think the senator can speak a little bit more about what it's in HB2 or one of the.
Didn't you ban vaping on schools?
Yes, that was, but it's in the impasse. It's in the budget. It was put for education and,
No, I think it's passed, actually. That's what.
yeah, but
that's
it's
what
not
they're saying.
implemented yet because of
Funding.
funding. Yes,
Yeah.
the funding is not ready. So, but I really want to address, because that's where the students, in
Yes,
terms
we'll-
of where you started
we'll follow
with
up
the
on that.
pain. And what we as a community can do to help you deal with that as early than getting to
Yeah.
your own remedy for addressing the pain.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll take that on. I'm Cindy Rosenwald, State Senator from most of Nashua. The legislature did a couple things. One, we did ban vaping on school grounds. Two, in the budget, we raised the age of all tobacco or all smoking and vaping products to age 21. The budget was vetoed, so it has not gone into effect, but it's still very much a subject of debate and a lot of interest. And the third thing we've been discussing and haven't come to agreement on is the rate of taxes that should be applied to vape devices and vaping products. So if you have interest in what the tax rate should be, you should call up or email or write to your local legislators. Thank you. And thank you to
Thank
the
you.
three of
And
you for hosting.
As you pointed out, what Representative Mangiapudi was saying is that the budget hasn't, because that hasn't gone into effect, we haven't implemented all of those laws. Let me just, on the tax piece, we are actually looking at legislation in Congress that would allow us to increase taxes on vaping devices and products. One of the things that I learned when I was governor is that there was a direct correlation between the amount of taxes on a pack of cigarettes and the percentage of young people who smoked. So one way to help address this would be to increase the cost of vaping products in a way that makes it harder for people to get. But let's go back. Does anybody want to respond to Representative Mangiapudi's question about what are the concerns that you hear from students that make them start vaping and feel like that's an answer to other issues that they're dealing with in their lives? Oh, let's let him go and then.
I feel like some of the concerns for students are like, there might be like some stuff, like some stress reliever, I guess you can say it's a stress reliever from like, we have like lots of homework, projects and stuff like that, sports and other things like that. So to make them like less stressed, I would say, because thinking about it, we're going to college soon and everybody has that on their mind and nobody wants to face the reality that we'll be adults and stuff like that. So we use it as a, like to take a step back and just relax to make ourselves feel like better so that we don't have to like look forward to going into the real world and stressing out about more stuff than we already do right now.
So if you're on an athletic team, are there any prohibitions against vaping or smoking?
Yeah, one of my teammates last year, he got prohibition. There was like, he was suspended for games and stuff like that. They take it very seriously because there's like student athletes and stuff like that here. They don't want to see us going down the wrong path because they are trying to like mold us into better people also, not just like the sports aspect. So they don't want us to go down the wrong path. So they will take away sports because as something like as a basketball player, like it's something that I love. Like I don't know what I would do without it. So if I was to get suspended and stuff like that, I would take a step back and be like, whoa, like I need to stop and think about what I'm doing and make some better choices than what I am.
Going along with that, I would definitely agree with him 100%. Everything he said is very true. But I also think that peer pressure is still a very real thing for us, especially coming into my freshman year. That's when I saw it the most amongst my friends. All the upperclassmen, they see upperclassmen doing it, they think it's cool, so they start to do it. I think it's mostly peer pressure, but I also agree there's stress, a lot of stress with school, home pressure, stuff like that, so yeah.
Any other thoughts? Yep.
I also think that like part of it really is like parents. Like we can tell our parents like we're stressed or I have anxiety or something, and our parents like, I can't speak for everyone, but like sometimes like depending from what, like I'm Brazilian, so in Brazil like mental health is just not really like a thing. Like they tell you to man up and get over it. So like I think that when you tell like parents understanding like where we're coming from, like we work, we do sports, we have school, like it's not easy. And helping parents understand mental health won't like make other students like want to turn to something else. When you have support in your home, then you don't need a device.
It's a really important point. And you know, I think challenges around mental health concerns, there is a lot of widespread bias, I think is the best word to use, in the community as a whole around mental health. People often don't want to talk about mental health. I don't know, has anybody seen the Queen Latifah's ads that she's doing with one of the health insurance companies, where she talks about when you go to your doctor, don't just talk about what your physical concerns are, but talk about how you're feeling about things and about your emotional health and your mental health. I think that's a really good advertisement because people often don't want to talk about that. You know, I'm on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, and we deal, of course, with our men and women who are serving in the military. And one of the huge challenges in the military has been trying to address mental health issues, PTSD, because people don't want to talk about it. They think, well, you know, I must not be strong enough, as you say, and it's just like any other health problem. We need to talk about it, we need to acknowledge it. If there are issues that people have and they need treatment, we need to make sure people can get that treatment.
I have a question for you guys, just kind of jumping off what the senator was saying there. When this first came to our, in front of us, it was a very reactive response. We have a very punitive response. If we catch you guys with vaping, things like that, it's a consequence. What can we do as our community here at South or community at North to not always be reactive? What are some things that we're not doing or not doing well enough to help get that message out and things like that? I'm just curious, what would be your ideas?
So I was actually in a like very similar type of situation where I didn't even know like about vaping until relatively recently. In fact, it was like a few weeks ago over the summer. I was at a presentation for vaping with the National Prevention Coalition, and they were doing the presentation to like middle school kids, and I was supposed to be there and to help out. But I found I didn't even know like so much of the stuff. I didn't, like they pulled out a bag and I literally thought it was USB drives for like 10 seconds until I found out they were actually like vaping stuff. So that was very surprising to me. So jumping off that point, I think it's very important to have education both for parents and students on vaping and the effects of vaping. When I talk to people, there's a common perception that vaping is harmless, it's just water vapor, but obviously we know that's not the case. Now, I don't think those like huge school-wide assemblies with like everybody just packed in an auditorium with like one person talking, I think those are generally ineffective because people don't pay attention. So maybe like stuff in the classroom, in smaller settings to get people educated. And I think if people know about vaping, then the usage will drop.
How about health class? Do you talk about it in health class?
Going back to what he was saying before about educating the children and the parents, I do believe that our parents aren't educated enough to help us through this process. And I think part of what the problem sparked is that as we were growing up, cigarettes were becoming less known and e-cigarettes hadn't really spiked yet. So we weren't educated about that because our parents didn't want to expose us to that. And then also speaking to what he said about how assemblies don't work, we're all in a huge room, we're not really paying attention. I also think a problem with that is that us students need to get involved and give each other student perspective. Because another problem with that is that people are coming in that we've never met before, so we don't really trust their opinion. And I think if some of the things that they're saying were coming from us, students would be more receptive to that because they understand that we understand what they understand. Thank you.
We did just get the 5-minute call, so we have about 5 minutes left, so Davon, you have to jump on there.
I feel like to like help us out, like me personally, like if I don't trust you, like I'm not gonna tell you anything. Like if I don't like have like a bond or like a built up trust with you, like I can't explain to you like how I'm feeling, like something that like I'm doing to speak up with you. Like I feel like if we had like more like trust and stuff like that, like say like if a student was gonna talk to you, they don't feel like, oh, they're gonna get in trouble because they want to talk to you and come out and speak out that they need help with something. They don't want to feel like, oh, I'm gonna get suspended, I can't do this, I can't do that. I feel like if you guys like can build more trust among the students and talk to them and saying, hey, if you guys need help, we're here to help, and not getting them in trouble, then maybe they'll speak out a little bit more instead of seeking other attention for something.
I think somebody mentioned students against destructive behaviors, Haley, right? And the Nashua Prevention Coalition. Are those organizations that a lot of students participate in, and are there ways, do you think they pass the trust test that you were talking about? We have a comment in the back, and then
I think that students are afraid to speak up to grown-ups. I think that's why that vaping got so big, because it was between the high schools and our parents weren't educated on it. They couldn't prevent it. You can continue. I just lost my train of thought.
I just wanted to say that I believe if mental health were taken on more seriously, not that it's not, but I believe that so many people can't grasp an understanding that if they're going through depression or anxiety, that is an actual illness. And I don't think people like talking about that or find someone they're comfortable talking to about that. So when they can't turn to someone, they might turn to something such as these devices.
yeah, absolutely.
So going back to what you said about SAD Club here at Nashua South, I know they offer it at North too, but I'm Ainsley Mazel, and I'm one of the officers of the SAD Club, and I know some of my peers here are a part of it too. So one of our main goals is trying to bring awareness to our community about vaping, because we know that it's a very tricky situation, and no matter what we say, if kids want to do it, they're going to find a way to do it. So we're trying to bring a positive aspect to it, because it is a negative situation, but if we try to project it in a fun way, against vaping in general, students are more likely to become a part of the SAD Club and bring awareness to it as well, and that's how we're trying to go about it.
So give me an example of some of the kinds of things you do.
So for Red Ribbon Week, which is coming up, we do a lot of activities during lunch, and we work with the Nashua Prevention Coalition as well. And we do games which kind of bring facts so students learn more about it. So we're trying to bring the awareness aspect to it, because if students learn more about it, that's hopefully the best path to the solution. So we do games and we hand out prizes in the cafeteria and things like that.
So do you think you reach a lot of students by doing that?
For sure, because our club, when we started, when I was a freshman, Alexis and I were actually some of the original members of SAD here. So when we started our freshman year, there was 4 members in SAD Club, and now we're seniors and we're officers of SAD, so we've kind of grown with the club, and we have over 30 members of the club now. So I think as we've kind of went through our high school career, we've seen SAD grow too. So we're hoping that as the club progresses, that it'll continue through even after we leave the high school.
Thank you. I think we're going to go to some of our guests here at the podium.
Hi, my name is Kim Ronis. I'm with Breathe New Hampshire, and I want to thank our panel as well as all of you students, because you are the voices we need to hear from. I have spoken in large auditoriums, and you're right, they don't necessarily want to hear from me, so anything we can do to involve you would be super. I just wanted to clarify, here in the state of New Hampshire, in July, House Bill 511 was signed into law. That impacts RSA 126K, which is the use of tobacco products and vape devices on school grounds, public school grounds, in school buildings. It clarifies both that they do not have to be nicotine in the e-liquids. It can be nicotine-free. It does not have to contain cannabis. So it just clarifies the definitions of all the devices, the components, and the liquids and the pods. So that passed in July of this summer.
And it says all of it is banned. Is that correct?
From public school grounds and buildings, yes.
Great.
Thank you.
I think we have another guest come to the podium.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Senator Shaheen.
Good morning.
Mayor, Principal Richard. I'm Howard Kaufman. I'm the Board of Ed here. And I know the focus this morning has been on tobacco and nicotine. But as the last speaker just briefly said, it's cannabis derivatives that are also being vaped. And we really didn't mention that today. And I'm looking to the senator to provide, you're probably way more informed than I on use. I mean, you cited the study earlier, but can you share with us and parents who might see this, how the other uses of vaping beyond nicotine? That's really what I would try to create awareness around if we could today.
Yeah. And one of the things that I hope will happen if we're able to pass legislation to charge e-cigarette companies fees is that we'll get some more information. Because one of the things we don't have enough of right now is data and research on what the impacts are. And as we talk about these cases that are being investigated right now, 380 are definitely related to e-cigarettes. There are over 436 states. And so far, the information suggests that THCs in those vaping products has been a cause of the problems that people are experiencing, the health problems. And one of the issues is that even though, you may have a vaping device that is supposed to use an e-cigarette product, people can vape other things in that vaping device. Oils, other marijuana byproducts, and currently there's no, even though vaping's a problem, if you're buying products that have no one to determine whether those are being produced in any way that's safe, then the health impacts of those are even worse. And so right now, I think we're still trying to learn what's going on there. And that's one of the real challenges as we look at the dangers of vaping.
Thank you for bringing awareness to this.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks.
I think we have one more member who's going to come up to the podium. This will be our last comment or question, and then we'll let the senator kind of wrap things up.
Hi, I'm Lisa Vasquez. I work at the health department here. And I have a question for the student panel. You guys were talking about, trust and who you get information from. But I know a lot of you follow YouTube influencers, Instagram influencers. I know that there are contests about who vapes the best ring and all these things. How do you trust, why do you trust those kind of, influencers or people when you don't really have a relationship with them, but some people come to your school and you don't really trust them? So how do you decide who to trust, who not to trust when information is being sent out through social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube? How do you guys discern that information? Thanks.
I think it's all part of a learning process. All these students here kind of learned off of each other and did it off of each other. It became so big because of each other. So we trust what's closer to our age because it's what we know. It's who we're surrounded by. So I think that's the biggest part.
Going a little bit off her comment, I think a lot of Instagram, YouTube, etc. influencers are very young, right? They're probably under 30, I guess, most of them. So I think it's easier to relate or connect with these people, even if you're not seeing them in person. It's much easier to say like, hey, this person like is going through similar things, and whatever they're saying probably relates to me as well. So I guess maybe that could be the reason why you see students connecting with random people online over like adults or, yeah.
One of the things we should remember, though, is that often influencers are getting paid for what they're posting to influence. And so they're being paid by someone who has an agenda. So hopefully young people will realize that. I know that I've got to take off because I have to catch a plane to go back to Washington. I want to thank Mayor Donches for being here. Thank you very much.
Senator.
And Mr. Richard.
Oh, thank you so much for coming.
And all of you students, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and hopefully you will stay in touch with us. I think the debate is just beginning in Washington, really, to see what we can do to be helpful, and I'm sure we're going to hear more both in Nashua at the city level and in New Hampshire at the state level. So thank you to everybody in the audience for everything you all are doing to try and address this issue as well. And I look forward to continuing to hear more about what's happening.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, where's Garrett?
We're out. No.